The mop water at Grace Mountain turns gray faster than anywhere else I've ever cleaned. I don't mean dirty gray. Not the honest gray of foot traffic and spilled coffee and the dull film that builds up on any floor in any public building. I mean a deep, almost charcoal gray, like something's leaching up from the tile itself, like the floor is sweating out something it doesn't want to hold. I've been the night custodian at Grace Mountain for 11 months now. Before that, I worked maintenance at a Holiday Inn off the interstate. The church pays almost double. Real benefits. Dental. The kind of package you don't turn down when your mother's on her 3rd round of chemo, and the medical bills have started arriving in stacks, thick enough to prop open a door. Mom raised me alone. Worked 2 jobs for most of my childhood, so I wouldn't have to. The least I can do now is make sure her hospital room has a window view, and her prescriptions don't lapse because I got squeamish about where my paycheck comes from. And Grace Mountain? It's a lot to get squeamish about. The church seats 4,000. That's not a typo. 4,000 bodies every Sunday morning in a building that looks more like a convention center than a house of worship. LED screens flanking the stage. A broadcast studio for the live stream. Pastor Enoch Marsh takes the pulpit in tailored suits and speaks in a voice so measured, so warm. It feels like he's specifically talking to you, even from 300 feet away. I don't attend the services. I come in at 10 p.m. after the building empties, and I leave around 5 a.m. My world is the silence between sermons. The echo of my footsteps in the main hall. The hum of the HVAC cycling through a space designed for thousands, serving an audience of 1. Most nights, the work is mindless. Vacuum the east wing, mop the lobby, wipe down the bathrooms, lock the fellowship hall, check the exit signs. The only area I'm not responsible for is the lower level. When I was hired, the facilities director, a man named Glenn, walked me through every room in the building with a laminated checklist. Classrooms, offices, green rooms, the baptismal area, the mechanical room behind the stage. Thorough. Methodical. The kind of guy who labels his label marker. But when we reached the stairwell door behind the choir room, he just tapped it with the back of his clipboard and said, "Pastor Marsh handles that himself. Don't worry about it." I didn't think much of it then. Every building has spaces that belong to someone. A megachurch pastor probably has a private study or a prayer room down there. Somewhere he goes to prepare sermons, decompress between services. I figured wrong. The first thing I noticed, really noticed, was the smell. About 3 months in, I started catching it after Wednesday night services. Grace Mountain runs a midweek healing service. Smaller crowd than Sunday, maybe 600 or 700. Pastor Marsh lies hands on people, prays over them. The whole production, worship team playing soft, lights dimmed to amber, a line of congregants waiting their turn at the altar rail. I've seen the videos online, shaky phone footage of people collapsing under his hands, weeping, rising from wheelchairs. The comments are always split. Half are calling it a miracle, the other half calling it a performance. But here's the thing. Some of it is real. I know that because I see the before and after. The woman in the wheelchair from the West Campus Bible study? I used to see her husband pushing her through the lobby every Wednesday evening. After Pastor Marsh prayed over her in October, she walked out on her own 2 legs. No wheelchair. No walker. Not even a cane. I watched her cross the parking lot from the 2nd floor window while I was wiping down the glass, and she moved like someone who had never needed a chair in her life. The teenager with the tumor behind his eye. I overheard his mother in the lobby the following week, telling another woman that the doctors couldn't explain it. The mass was gone. Completely gone. After a single session with the pastor. A man from the evening congregation who'd been on dialysis for 2 years. His kidneys just started working again. Like someone had flipped a switch back to the factory setting. I should have felt hope. My mother's dying. Real, actual miracles are happening 30 feet from where I mop the floors every night. But the smell. After every Wednesday service, there's a smell in the main hall that I can't place. It's not rot, not exactly. It's more like the memory of something organic, like a room where raw meat was left out on the counter and then cleaned thoroughly, but the ghost of it stays behind, sweet and heavy and low, hanging just above the floor. Wrong in a way I couldn't name, but I could feel in the back of my throat. And the mob water turns that gray I mentioned, darker on Wednesday nights than any other night. So dark, I started changing the water twice instead of once, and the second bucket still came out that deep, sick charcoal. I brought it up to Daryl. Daryl's the other custodian. He covers the day shift. Been at Grace Mountain for 6 years. Older guy. Quiet. The kind of person who communicates mostly through sighs and the angle of his eyebrows. When I mentioned the smell, he set his coffee down very slowly, looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "You mop it up, and you go home. That's the job." He wouldn't say anything else about it. I started paying closer attention after that. The gray water, the smell. I kept a mental log. Wednesdays. Always Wednesdays. But then, I started noticing something else. On the mornings after healing services, certain pews had stains on the cushions. Not visible stains, not to the naked eye, but when I ran upholstery cleaner over the seats nearest the altar, the extraction tank pulled up fluid that was dark, almost black. I held the tank up to the light once and swirled it, and it had a thickness to it, a weight that water alone doesn't carry. I told myself it was old coffee, makeup, something mundane that had soaked through the fabric over months of use. I found the teeth. It was a Thursday night, about 2 a.m. I was vacuuming the prayer room adjacent to the main hall, a smaller space where people sometimes go after service to sit quietly and reflect. The vacuum made a sound like it hit a marble, sharp, hard. I switched it off, knelt down, and worked the object free from the carpet fibers. A tooth. A human molar, roots still attached. No blood, no tissue. Clean. Like it had been shed. The way a child's tooth loosens and then falls. Except this was an adult molar with a full, intact root. I held it under the fluorescent light, turned it over between my fingers. It was real, heavy, undeniably, unmistakably, a human tooth sitting in the carpet of a church prayer room at 2 a.m. I checked the rest of the room on my hands and knees, found 2 more near the baseboard by the window, a premolar, and what I think was a canine. All clean, all intact, all with their roots, as if they had simply released from whoever they belonged to. I put them in a Ziploc bag and locked them in my glove box. Sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes with the engine running and the heat on, trying to decide if I should call someone. My supervisor, the police, a dentist, anyone who could tell me I was wrong about what I was holding. Then my phone buzzed. Mom's oncologist. She'd had a bad night. New scan results weren't what they'd hoped. I was going to go in the morning to discuss the next steps. I went back inside and finished my shift. After the teeth, I started finding other things. Hair. Not strands. Clumps. Thick, healthy clumps of hair, tucked behind radiators, caught in floor grates, pressed into the seams of pew cushions near the front. Different colors. Different textures. Always near the altar. I found blonde hair and black hair and gray hair, some of it still warm when I picked it up, which made no sense at 2 a.m. in an empty building. Fingernails. Whole, intact fingernails. Not torn or broken, smooth at the base, like they'd been gently pushed out from underneath by something new growing in to replace them. And once, a patch of skin, paper thin, translucent, folded neatly beneath the lip of the stage like a shed cocoon. I held it up to the overhead light, and I could see the pores. I could see the tiny, colorless hairs, a piece of someone left behind after a transaction that I hadn't witnessed. Every piece appeared only after healing services, only near the altar, only in the hours when I was alone. I went to Daryl again. This time I brought the bag of teeth. I set it on the break room table between us like a piece of evidence. He looked at the bag, looked at me, and for the first time in the months I'd known him, I saw something behind his eyes that wasn't just fatigue or disinterest. It was pity. "You want my advice?" he said. I nodded. "Put that bag in a dumpster that isn't on church property, and stop looking for things that don't want to be found." He was already standing, already reaching for his jacket, but he stopped at the door and said one more thing, so quietly I almost missed it over the hum of the break room refrigerator. "My wife had MS. 8 years. Couldn't feed herself by the end. Couldn't dress herself. Couldn't remember my name on the bad days. She's fine now. Has been for 5 years. Runs a garden club." He didn't say Pastor Marsh healed her. He didn't even have to. "I've found worse than teeth, son." He left, and I sat there in the break room under the buzzing fluorescent lights, holding a bag of human teeth, understanding for the first time that Daryl wasn't just a quiet man who kept to himself. He was a man who made a deal and learned to live with what it cost. The next night, Thursday, I did something stupid. I went to the main hall after finishing the east wing. The building was empty, silent. I walked down the center aisle toward the stage with my flashlight in one hand and a flathead screwdriver in the other. I'm not sure what I thought the screwdriver would do. It just felt better than having an empty hand. I climbed the 3 steps to the stage, knelt down where I'd seen Marsh kneel in the videos, pressed my palm flat against the wood. It was warm, not the warmth of a heated building. This was deeper, organic, like pressing your hand against the side of an animal that's been lying in the sun. I could feel something under my palm. Not a vibration exactly, more like a pulse. Slow, steady, patient. I pulled my hand back so fast I stumbled off the stage and caught myself on the front pew. Stood there in the dark for a long time, breathing hard, staring at the floor that I just touched. The wood grain looked different where my hand had been, darker, like a bruise forming under skin. By the time I came back with my flashlight to check, it was gone. The floor looked normal, ordinary wood, like nothing had happened, but my palm tingled for the rest of the night. A low, warm hum that didn't fade until I was halfway home. I should have listened to Daryl. Instead, the next Wednesday, I stayed late. I hid in the mechanical room behind the baptismal, a tight, dark space between water heaters and the back wall of the stage. Hot, cramped. The air tasted like copper and dust. But from there, I could see through a ventilation grate directly into the main hall. The service ended at 9. The congregation filled out by 9:30. The worship team packed their instruments by 10. The building emptied the way it always does, slowly, then all at once, until the only sounds left were the settling of the structure and my own breathing. But Pastor Marsh didn't leave. At 10:40, he walked back into the main hall, alone. He changed out of his suit into something simpler, a white shirt, dark pants, bare feet on the carpet. He moved differently than he did on stage. No warmth, no performance, no audience to charm. His face was blank, focused, the expression of a man doing a job. Each syllable placed with the precision of a man reading contract terms aloud. A negotiation. And as he spoke, things began to rise from the wood around his hands. Small objects pushing up through the grain like splinters in reverse, surfacing. Teeth, hair, nails, translucent curls of skin. He was giving them back. His fingers sank into the surface like it was warm clay, like the wood had been waiting for their contact. The grain rippled outward from his hands in slow, concentric waves, like the surface of a pond disturbed from something moving underneath. And from somewhere beneath, somewhere deep, far deeper than the building's foundation should go, I heard a sound. Low, rhythmic, almost like breathing. The floor of the church. It was breathing. Pastor Marsh began to speak, not in English, not in tongues, not in the theoretical babbling of charismatic preachers trying to perform holiness for a crowd. This was structured, deliberate, each syllable placed with the precision of a man reading contract terms aloud. A negotiation. And as he spoke, things began to rise from the wood around his hands. I understood then. The healings were real, because something under the church was taking that sickness, pulling the tumors, the nerve damage, the failing organs, the dying cells. It was pulling it out of people's bodies, drawing it down through the floor like poison through a drain. And the cost was pieces of them. Small pieces, a tooth, a handful of nails, a patch of skin, fragments the healed person would never miss, or wouldn't think to question in the overwhelming, blinding relief of being well again. And Pastor Marsh was the middleman, the broker, kneeling at the altar every Wednesday night after the lights went down and the doors locked, settling the tab. It went on for what felt like a long time, the low pulse beneath the floor, the objects surfacing and sinking, Marsh speaking steadily in that language that wasn't even a language. I pressed my face against the grate and watched, and didn't move, and I barely breathed. Then it stopped. The floor went still. The silence came back all at once, heavier than before. Pastor Marsh pulled his hands free with a soft, wet sound, like roots coming loose from soil. He stood slowly, flexed his fingers, rolled his shoulders, and I saw his hands trembling. Just for a moment, just long enough for me to see it before he pressed his fists against his thighs and steadied them. He closed his eyes, took a single deep breath through his nose, and when he opened his eyes again, the composure was back. The warmth, the control, like pulling on a coat. But I'd seen it. Whatever was under that floor, it cost him too. Then he turned and looked directly at the ventilation grate. Right at me. Dan? He said, calm, unsurprised, like he knew I was there the whole time. Your mother. What's her name? I didn't answer. I backed out of the mechanical room, crossed the parking lot at a half run, my keys jangling loud enough to echo off the empty campus buildings. Then I sat in my car with the doors locked and the engine off until my hands stopped shaking enough to grip the steering wheel. I drove home, sat on the edge of my bed in the dark, listened to a voicemail from my mom's night nurse about adjusting her pain meds because the current dosage wasn't keeping up with the progression. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I drove to the hospital. Mom looked smaller than the last time I'd seen her. Thinner. Her skin had taken on a grayish tone, not unlike the mop water. And it tells you the body's winding down, giving up. She smiled when she saw me, asked if I was eating enough, asked about work, told me I looked tired, and that I shouldn't worry so much. I sat with her for 3 hours, held her hand, told her about a movie I'd seen, which I hadn't actually seen. Normal shit. Small stuff. The stuff you say when the truth is too heavy to carry into a hospital room and too sharp to set it down without cutting someone. When I left, I sat in the hospital parking lot and checked my phone. I had a text from a number that I didn't even recognize. The offer stands. She wouldn't lose much. A few teeth, maybe. Some hair she's already losing to the chemo anyway, but it has to be asked for. It only works if you ask. Think about it. Below the text was a photo of my mother's hospital room, taken from inside, from the corner near the window where I'd been sitting 20 minutes earlier. No one had been in that room but us. I stared at the photo for a long time, zoomed in, looked for a reflection, a shadow, any sign that someone had actually been standing in that corner. There was nothing. Just the room, the bed, the monitors. The angle wasn't possible unless you were standing exactly where I'd been standing. Not someone watching from outside. Something that was already there. Already inside the walls. Already under the floors. Already everywhere the church reached. Waiting to be invited in. I went back to work that night. Mopped the floors. Emptied the trash. Cleaned the bathrooms. Restocked the dispensers. Avoided the altar. Pastor Marsh's office light was on when I passed it around midnight. The door was open just enough to see him sitting at his desk, reading a Bible, like any pastor might at the end of a long day. He looked up when my footsteps slowed outside his door, and he smiled. Warm, genuine, patient. The same smile 4,000 people see every Sunday morning. "No rush, Dan," he said. "But the longer you wait, the less of her there'll be to save. I'm still cleaning the floors at Grace Mountain Church. I haven't said yes. But last Tuesday, Mom's oncologist used the word hospice for the first time. Said we should start thinking about comfort measures, about making her comfortable, which is the word doctors use when they stop talking about making her better. And every Wednesday night, after the congregation goes home and the worship lights go dark and the building settles into its heavy midnight silence, the floor still breathes, and I mop around it, and I think about my mother's teeth.